never changed it, never changed it. Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now my whole team here. Now we're here, now we're here. Now we're here, now we're here.
I wanted to quit this job and host tournaments so I can make $30,000 a pop, but they made me host the Fray. My name is Derry H. Welcome to the program. On tonight's show, myself and the panel will be discussing UFGT, injustice in the Mortal Kombat community, money, evolution, tournaments. It's all going down tonight. But first, allow me to introduce our illustrious panel. Appearing on the program for the first time, one of the luminaries of the East Coast scene, a TO from that end of the country. You can follow him on Twitter at twitter.com/SJCage, one half of the duo that throws down on EC Throwdown, which you can follow on twitter.com/EC Throwdown. And they're going to be bringing you the Fall Classic this fall, which you can keep up on at www.tfctournament.com. It's Sweet Johnny Cage. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Derry?
I'm good. Another new arrival for the program. We've got twitter.com/fourth place. I'm sorry, twitter.com/that Mike Ross guy. It's Mike Ross.
Man, I can't even deny what the universe wants from me. But yes, I am happy to be here.
You know, earlier this week I joked with Nerd Josh that he's the anime Mike Ross because he perpetually wins third and fourth place. But I think you might be the Street Fighter Nerd Josh. We'll see. Twitter.com/Gootex. You might have seen this guy on some programs with Mike Ross before, but he's here tonight. He's a return guest. As always, we're glad to have him. It's Gootex. How you doing, man?
Thanks for having me back, Derry. I'm doing well.
You know, it's the first time I've ever called you out, and then you answered the first time out. Always when I call you out, it's like, it's twitter.com/Gootex, and then there's like a silence.
Normally I have my mic muted, but today we're doing it live.
All right. And then last but not least, also from the East, the Beast of the East, say good stuff in the last couple tournaments I've seen him in. The CPM Godfather. It's twitter.com/NYCFurby. It's Arturo Sanchez. How are you?
Yo, what's good? Shouts to all the FGC millionaires out there.
Yeah, well, all these TOs with their millions of dollars. All right. It's been a dramatic week in a community that is known for its drama. We had UFGT over the weekend, and that kicked off a lot. But first, let's just go directly into talking about UFGT. That's actually one of my favorite tournaments of the year. Adam Keats puts on a great tournament every year, and this year no exception. And the results, starting out with KOF, we had Reynald winning first place, taking it over Romance, and whatever tournament these guys go to, they pretty much trade back and forth on who's going to win. This time it was Reynald. And then AGE's other KOF player, Mario, ends up taking third place in KOF 13. In Dat Crack in Injustice, Yo wins DC. It was Chris G walking away with Testers Among Us. He took it over Wound Cowboy, who played Sinestro. And Wound Cowboy surprised a lot of people, impressed a lot of people with his Sinestro, myself included. I really enjoyed watching his Sinestro. It looks like Sinestro is playing a lot stronger after the patch. And then third place, we had our Call's own NYC Furby. Arturo Sanchez gets third place with Green Lantern. Some sick Green Lantern play from Saban at UFGT. Street Fighter Cross Tekken, again. Chris G walking away with the championship, taking it over Cool Kid. the big story here, I thought, was CJ Truth with third place. He also did well in Street Fighter 4. We'll get to that in a second. But this guy, CJ Truth, you guys make sure that you are keeping up with this kid. He is a kid. He's just starting out, but he's doing real damage. Third place in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. First place, Chris G. And then, speaking of Chris G, you have Marvel vs. Capcom, of course, Chris G. Second place goes to Ramasama. A lot of people were saying at NCR that the match they wanted to see in the grand final was Ramasama versus Chris G. We got Neo versus Chris G, and it was a 6-0. A lot of people said that if Ramasama had been given a chance to fight that grand final with Chris G, we would have saw a different outcome. But unfortunately, Ramasama did get that shot, and he wasn't able to capitalize. Chris G takes it away. First place, Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And then finally, last but not least, in Street Fighter 4, he won UFGT 7 in Street Fighter 4, and he wins it this time around. Mr. Street Fighter himself, Alex Valle, Level Up Own, he takes first over Wolf Crone and CJ Truth. He walks away with third place over the perpetual fourth place. It's like the Molly Ringwald of Street Fighter, the one you're always rooting for. Mike Ross in fourth place in Street Fighter 4 at UFGT. All right, so those are results. But like we said before, UFGT, a starting place for a lot of drama this week. And the fighting game community is a place where drama tends to happen more often than not. I used to joke about how, when something would happen on a daily basis, I'd be like, oh, it's now the time that we're all upset about something. But it seems like every day since Saturday, there's been something going on. The first thing that really popped up out of UFGT was that a lot of Injustice players were upset over having to wake up at, well, I don't know what time they woke up, but they were playing the game at 9 a.m. and they thought it was too early. I'm going to ask, let me get Arturo to explain a little bit of what some people were upset about with Injustice at 9 o'clock.
Oh yeah, well, basically, Injustice, it had I believe it was the fourth amount of entrants. It was like 2 entrants behind dive kick or whatever. People were pretty much upset because they felt like Injustice should have had a preferential slot, like closer to what the Capcom games were. But the tournament ran fine. Like nobody was really complaining about the tournament. It was more like on the production side. People wanted to see more. They wanted to see like a better time slot, things like that. So that's where a lot of the maliciousness comes from.
Do you agree with the people who are asserting that Injustice probably deserved to be a little bit? I mean, it sounds like you do, but do you agree that they should have gone a little bit later on?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I kind of agree with that. I mean, as you guys all know, I've been pushing Injustice kind of hard. But at the same time, I understand that it's Key's tournament and Iron Galaxy put up the money and it was going to be a dive kick fest. And I knew that before going there. I mean, I wasn't even going to go at first. It was like a last minute thing. So, like, I wasn't really, I mean, while I did share the opinions of some of the MK community, I wasn't blowing it up like them. I don't think that's a good way to do business, blowing up TOs in public.
Sweet Johnny Cage, speaking as a TO, would you have put Injustice on later in the day?
We actually put it on at 8 p.m. on Sunday at ECT. It was the second to last game. We did like KOF, Persona, and then Tekken, and then Street Fighter, Injustice, Marvel. At ECT, we knew that it was going to be huge, and we have a very strong MK community in the tri-state area. And we do pull a lot of the East Coast, like Philly, Virginia, Maryland. So we knew that it was going to be really big. So it just made sense for us to put it later in the day. But at the same time, like I do agree with Art that it's Adam's show. And, the schedule was posted beforehand. So he is right in saying, like, why didn't anybody say anything before? But, I mean, this is the FGC. Nobody checks anything until they're at the tournament, so.
I think that's a fair point to respond to, and it's something that flashed through my mind when I was reading about all this on Twitter and hearing about the reactions at the actual venue. Gutex, do you think that? I mean, you've met Keith before. You've talked to the dude. Do you think that this is something that maybe could have been avoided if the people who were the most discontented with the decision had raised their complaints ahead of time instead of waiting until they got to the venue and then doing it over Twitter in a very passive-aggressive type of way? It seemed.
Yeah, I think that, the schedule was posted ahead of time, but like John said, nobody really checks these things. I think definitely going about it, publicly on Twitter, putting people on blast, never really ends well, especially considering that most problems in the FGC could probably be solved with like a first to 10 in the game of someone's choice. But everybody just wants to do this passive aggressive tactic like you mentioned. And it's really unfortunate because, hey, it's Keats' tournament. You guys knew what you were signing up for. And more importantly, if somebody's not happy with the placement of a certain game, why not create your own event around that game and you can run whenever you want. You can run it whenever you want to.
Turo, do you think it's unfair to say that? I made a remark that I felt it was a little passive aggressive, but I wasn't at the venue. Were these guys bringing this up to Keats at all? I mean, like maybe I'm mischaracterizing the situation here, but
Yeah. Like I mean, they were kind of bringing it up to Keats. I mean, like Keats does run really good tournaments. Don't get me wrong. Like, no, I think one area that he can improve on is like customer relations, because people take like what he says the wrong way, and it comes off as him being really abrasive when he doesn't really mean that. But that's some of the ways that he brushed off to the MK community, I guess. So that's why I think like that's where a lot of the animosity comes from. But I don't really necessarily facilitate a split between the MK community and the rest of the FGC as far as running their own events. I feel like they've become slowly more integrated into what we're doing, especially in the East Coast and Midwest. And I feel like if there was a split, like the entire FGC would suffer as a whole, in my opinion.
I'm not saying like that. Oh, there shouldn't. I'm not saying there should be a split. I'm just saying, I don't really see an Injustice or MK major or centric Injustice or MK centric event. Like why don't maybe it's time for that. I'm not saying
Yeah,
that these
yeah.
guys
No,
should be
yeah.
part of it,
You're right.
but if the numbers are that
Right.
big, then it should justify it.
Yeah. Like I mean, like I have pushed for like a When's Comics major. I think like an Injustice and Marvel only major would flow through the roof. But that's just me.
Johnny Cage, when MK9 was first released, Tom Brady was online, and I forget which stream it was in specific, but he basically took it upon himself to put the entire Mortal Kombat community on blast because he was, uh, at the time, he was a little bit angry with the fact that the community wasn't coming out to tournaments at the time. And he referenced the fact that the community seemed happy to just sit online and play games, um, which is for the record, these guys had been kind of forced to do that during the PS2 days, and it had been very sort of people's garages, and it wasn't a lot of stuff going on. But do you feel like maybe there's a little bit of a culture shock going on with the MK community where they don't necessarily have a lot of experience with holding these major events? So when people say that maybe they should have a MK major, it's like, well, damn, give us a chance to get caught up, guys. We'll just learn how to do this stuff.
I think that that's a really good question, and this is going to seem like a very long-winded answer, but I have an anecdote for that. And basically, I forget when it was or what the exact topic was, but on Test Your Might, which for those who don't know is the like MK Injustice centric forum, somebody was complaining about something with a tournament. I really don't remember the exact specifics, but there was like a really big sense of entitlement from a few basically like keyboard cowboys, people who really don't show up to tournaments anyway. And somebody made a really good point saying that when Mortal Kombat 9 came out, us as tournament organizers were already well in the transition of bringing it from arcades and people's houses and everything like that into these huge ballrooms at hotels and doing what is now considered a major. We aren't doing ECC anymore at 8 on the Break in Jersey. We're doing an event in a hotel over the course of 2 days. So it's a much different environment. And that's the environment that they were introduced to, the MK community, is that they are only used to, or the new players are only used to these big tournaments, and everything is done for them. Like back in the day, you did not have streams. Streams to us are still like, what? You can broadcast this to 25,000 people over 2 days? That's wild. But to them, that's normal. That's how it is. So for them, this is their starting point, and they want something more when we wanted more out of the arcades. So I think that that's a disconnect, but I don't feel that separating it and having an Injustice only or comics only major, maybe as like an exhibition, a one-off type thing. But I really don't think a split is a really good idea. And we always include MK, or whatever game the MK community is playing. We always include them at ECT. Like at East Coast Throwdown 2, we were the first ones to ever stream Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and we ran that off MAME, and that had a more hyper showing. It generated more hype than Super Street Fighter 4. So I mean, mixing things in is not necessarily bad, but as long as you treat it right and give them the right amount of burn, it's only going to pay off.
Mike, if you had made top 8 in Cross Tekken at UFGT, you would have been forced to play on the second stream at 10 o'clock. So obviously, there was, I mean, it wasn't just Injustice that was, somebody's got to play at 9, somebody's got to play at 10.
I mean,
you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say this topic alone just kind of bugs me, but I was there at 9 a.m. even though I didn't have to play anything. I didn't make top 8 in Cross Tekken, but I was still there. And that's 7 a.m. West Coast time. I had 8 a.m. pulls and Street Fighter 4 at Evo. When I did make top 8 in Cross Tekken, it was at 10 a.m. It's not much later. I just don't care. It's just wake up, show up, and play. Just it bugs me that we're having a topic or a discussion that the stupid game started at 9 a.m. in the first place. I don't care. Start Street Fighter 4 at 9 a.m. I don't care. That means the tournament will be done by 2 p.m. and I can go home and get on with my day.
Saban, do you feel like maybe this is people are a little caught up in the fact that people are upset about 9 o'clock and they're making remarks about day jobs and stuff, but it's less about that, about the time, and more about the fact that the Injustice players wanted to be showcased and they felt like they weren't?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the Injustice community, they feel like it's their time. Like, looking at tournament numbers for the most part, it is like the third biggest game, and it's a contender with Marvel on streams for sure in terms of which gets the most numbers. So it wasn't really about the time per se. It was more about them getting a preferential time slot, to expose their skills to the greater fighting game community, I guess. And I mean, like that's why I guess that's a good thing because the one positive thing you can take out of it, I guess, is that there's a lot of interest in Injustice because nobody really cares about Persona or Cross Tekken being at 9 a.m. But for Injustice, people raise like a shitstorm. Yeah.
Right on. Keats does a lot with his tournaments with regard to he was the first guy to run that I know of to run very, very small pools so that they could be handled very efficiently, so that they could be done quickly. He's a stickler on time when it comes to this is your pool's time, you are there or you're disqualified. We do not run on tournament standard time. We actually run on actual time. But there was some criticism coming out of the event that event judges and event organizers are a little too quick to disqualify players who were a little bit late. Arturo, you actually played a part in some of that went down when Chris G got disqualified from his pool. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so basically, Injustice was about to start. It was like about 9 a.m. or whatever, and they started running some of the pools matches first, and like it's top 8. Everything's run on one stream. You don't have to run all the matches at once. And I guess while one of the matches was going on, Chris G was 2 minutes late to check in, and Keats wanted to DQ him. Now keep in mind that I had to play him next, so if he actually went through with the DQ, it would have benefited me, but that's not really my style. Like, I want to play somebody and beat them fair and square, if anything, even though me fighting Chris G is disadvantaged matchup. So I told Keats, man, I was like, yo, like, I want to play Chris. Is there anything you can do here? Like, I mean, yeah, he didn't show up, like, on the tee at 9 o'clock, but you're running a match right now. Like, it's not slowing down the tournament. And I guess that's, like, another thing that people, like, do get frustrated about with Keats. His tournaments run efficiently, so efficiently to the point that he doesn't use tact, I guess, in handling certain situations, and people get mad at that. But at the same time, like, I can't fault where he's going for. I like the fact that he wants efficiency in his events.
Johnny Cage, as a TO, what are your thoughts on this very the report was, well, Chris G claims he was 3 minutes late. Arturo says 2 to 3 minutes late. What are your thoughts on DQing a player who's late?
At ECT, we'll DQ anybody. We DQ'd Issei Suzuki one year because he will admit this if you ever get a hold of him in Japan, but he was getting drunk with Javits in our room, and we DQ'd him out of his pool because he didn't show up. We will DQ anybody at ECT. We don't care. But in the same vein, no one's really gonna miss a top 8 match if they have like a really solid chance at winning money. And Chris definitely has a solid chance of winning money. That's exemplified by this weekend. 902. I mean, come on, it's really not that big of a deal, especially if a match is running. But if the check-in, don't quote me on this, but I believe that the check-in was 15 minutes before it was actually happening.
Yeah, that's
So
true. That's true.
technically, he was 17 minutes late if you're going to go by that. But it's top 8. I mean, for everybody wants to see him play. Everybody wants to see Art play, and that's a really good match. So for the sake of the show, I wouldn't DQ him. I would run another match if he was that late. I mean, if you can't find him after 2 or 3 matches, then yeah, DQ him. But if it's top 8, I wouldn't mess with it too much.
Mike, I'm a player who I tend to get to my pools on time, my matches on time. There's the old saying in the scene is tournament standard time, where tournaments run an hour late or more pretty regularly. And I think one of the reasons is that they, a TO will say on the Facebook event page, for example, registration closes at 1:30. You're there at the venue at 1 o'clock. 1:30 rolls around. The TO's like, oh, well, so-and-so's not here. So-and-so's not here. So we're going to register until 2:30. Do you, like, for me, when I hear that Chris G was DQ'd after 2 minutes, 3 minutes, some people say that's harsh. For me, I mean, like, it's top 8. I see what Johnny Cage is coming from, but for a pool match, 2 to 3 minutes, like, to me, if somebody gets DQ'd, they're DQ'd, they're not there. I mean, that's how it goes. How do you feel about that?
It's weird because I think 2 minutes, that's like extremely harsh. In this scenario, I can understand if this is like the regular pools kind of situation, and you've been strict with everybody because you need it to run on time, and you clearly stress that you got to check in 15 minutes early. So you're just not stuck around waiting for people to show up as they're, in the lobby, grabbing a drink, whatever, just lollygagging. But at this point in top 8, when you're 2 minutes late, and I don't know, like, Art, maybe you can answer this, but did anybody speak with Chris beforehand? Like, did he say he was on his way, like he was coming down the elevator or something?
Well, like as soon as I found out about it, like I texted Chris on Twitter and like I hit up his phone and I was like, "Hey, Chris, come down." And pretty much when it came to that, Keith saw that we were clearly upset with the situation, and he actually left the decision up to us, and it was a unanimous decision to let Chris G play. Like nobody wanted to see him DQ'd because nobody wanted to be in that same situation and have that done to them. That's just kind of like common courtesy. You know what I mean? But like I do respect like the intention. Like tournament should run on time, absolutely. But
of course,
as long as it's not holding it up, like I would like a little bit of leniency.
Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah, like as long as they can run, this is speaking strictly because it's top 8. As long as they can run, the other matches, then just give him a second. But if you've run every match and this dude's not there, then you got to DQ him straight up.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Ryan, UFGT does a lot that I think a lot of people who go to tournaments regularly admire. Keats does a lot of fun stuff like the character auction tournaments. I watched, probably my favorite part of the entire weekend watching UFGT was watching the Injustice auction and then watching that tournament. I had such a good time watching that. Is there anything from any other tournaments that you've been to recently that are on that level of some of the inventiveness that Keats has been bringing to tournaments that you enjoyed yourself?
That's a good question. I mean, I think Keats is really kind of changing a little bit of the expectations of the people that go to his events. Most guys are still just focused on, running the brackets and getting through everything on time, that, you're not really seeing a whole lot of other stuff. I was actually going to mention panels, but they did that too. I don't know. I'm kind of empty. I don't know. Like, I think, though, that other TOs will probably start doing more of this stuff, because what's going to happen is that, people aren't – I think the people have no chance at winning the money, which is basically like the 99%. are going to stop wanting to go to tournaments unless there's other things to do, such as go to panels and play these other tournaments and games and stuff. So I think we're going to see more of that because it's totally starting to need to be more like a convention, not just a tournament.
Johnny Cage, as a TO, what are you seeing your fellow TOs doing on the East Coast, on the West Coast, that's making you take note and maybe want to inspire you to do some things at ECT?
Like Ryan was saying, panels are a really good idea. I thoroughly enjoy panels. It's like one of my favorite parts of going to a con or something. I'm always under the impression that you're going to a tournament, you're going to play, but I do agree with Ryan that like it's always nice to have other things for people to do. And Keats definitely does. That's what makes UFGT unique is the other things to do aside from playing. Because I mean, there are plenty of people who go 2 and out. Something like what is it, like 28% of a tournament goes 2 and out. So they need something to do. I feel with ECT we offer a lot of unique exhibitions, and we had $1,000 Marvel 2 exhibition at random. Our sponsor, One Frame Link, put that up, and that was literally put together that Saturday. So we would have pimped that out more if we had known it was actually happening. But as long as something unique to your tournament is happening, I feel like that's going to separate you.
So speaking of tournaments, earlier today there were some comments being passed around online where certain players were remarking that they felt as if certain tournament organizers were more interested in making money off of tournaments than actually throwing a good tournament. I'll throw this back to Johnny Cage before passing it around the panel. You don't have to give me any specifics here, but you just say yes or no here. Are you making a great amount of money running tournaments?
Not really. I still have a day job.
What you're saying is you're not making $30,000 every ECT.
Not even close. I wish I was.
Arturo, were you surprised to read some of this stuff? I mean, I saw a lot of numbers being thrown around today. It was all 5-figure profit. I mean, like, were you surprised by any of this kind of talk today?
No, not really, because a lot of tournament players, they're focused on winning. They don't know about the business side that well, and like it is natural for the fighting game community to want more money, especially seeing all these articles come out. So I wasn't surprised at all.
Gutex, any surprise from you to hear people talking about $20,000, $30,000 profit on majors? Not even Evo, but just majors.
I think it's kind of something that's been a long time coming. I think the biggest factor is the registration fees. I think a lot of players are maybe thinking that the TOs are caking off the registration fees, but not really putting much back into the pot in terms of like pot bonuses. I mean, all you have to do is really do the math and kind of calculate how many people showed up to the venue, and then you multiply that by the registration fee. So, I mean, if you're not like super well versed in all the other expenses that go into running a major, I mean, I could see how you might think, oh, well, like there were, 500 people that showed up that paid 50 bucks each, that's a lot of money, but, they're not really taking into account the other expenses. But, but this is the thing, like, what's wrong with these guys making money? Even if they were, like, who cares?
That's actually a really good point. Mike, do you agree with Ryan that maybe this has been coming up for a bit? Maybe it's been boiling to a head, that there are players out there who maybe don't have all the information about. I mean, because TOs, they have to pay for venue, they have to pay for damage to the venue. Because I know specifically just at NCR, John Choi had to pay out of pocket quite a bit of damages at the Domani the last time we were there. Because there were quite a few players who did damage to their hotel rooms that John was on the hook for. You've got, in the era of the modern stream, you've got, the stream itself, which costs quite a bit of money depending on how tricked out they want the stream with bandwidth, flying in either Spooky or Level Up or whomever, sometimes flying in commentators, flying in talent from outside of the country. There's a lot of cost that goes into this, but do you feel like maybe with TOs, because I don't think TOs would necessarily be talking about this because they're not trying to sound. No TO I know is trying to crawl up on a cross and be like, "Look at all I have to do, guys. Come on."
Yeah.
But there's no transparency there. Do you feel like maybe this has been coming for a while?
I think Ryan's. I agree with everything Ryan said, like 100%. Um, just man, like seriously, these issues that people are bringing up, I really just don't get it, because like what Ryan ended with was one of those kind of who cares kind of moments. Like what do you want if so and so, if I throw a tournament, the Micros major tomorrow, and I make 30K, why are people going to be mad? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? That money that I made to put the venue together, organize everything, do all the promotions, like you said, flying players out. I mean, again, this is not a number that we're saying that people are even making, but I just don't even understand why people are tripping off of it in the first place. Like, people don't want to see others succeed. I mean, granted, the only time
This is the FGC, Mike.
yeah, I was about to say, yo, if I see you, with that FGC chain on, I'm gonna snatch it in the hood. You know what I'm saying? Like, is that what? But I was gonna say, the only time that it's totally unjustified is when you might make this whatever number you want to come up with in your head, and then you don't pay out the players. And this has happened before, and I think that these people shouldn't be allowed to show their face in the fighting game scene again. That's the
Whoa,
only time I really. That's the
that
only time
was-
I think it becomes a problem.
That comment was a revelation.
Well, yeah, of course it was. Straight up. But other than that, let TOs are doing their job. I don't understand why people are, going crazy about it. What do you want them to do?
Johnny Cage, do you agree that like TOs, if they make a profit, I mean, like I've been a part of helping make a tournament run smoothly. It's hard work. I mean, do you feel like maybe as long as nobody's walking out through the venue be like, yo, $100 venue fee, deal with it. Like, what's the deal with TOs making a little cash off of these things? Do you feel like maybe certain people in the FGC will not be happy unless they see a TO going bankrupt after they throw an event?
Well, I mean, no matter what the number is, it's going to be too much. It could be $1, and they're like, "Oh, well, why don't you just put that dollar back in?" That's where a lot of the issue comes from. Is that no matter what number anybody says, it's going to be too much. But if I literally just pulled up a calculator. If you take minimum wage, which here in New York is $7.50, and you multiply it on average, no joke, leading up to ECT. I work a day job, but at my day job, I'm also planning ECT, and then I'll go to sleep maybe 2, 3 in the morning, wake up at 6. So I'm working like a 60-hour work week. If you do that, times it by a year, I make less than minimum wage, like a minimum wage salary off of a tournament. Plus, no matter what we make, it gets split down the middle by me and Joe. So it's even less than what people think. So it's really, I mean, I'm with Ryan and Mike. I don't see why it's such a huge issue to everybody. A lot of work goes into it. It's not just what you see those 2 days. And those 2 days, I can tell you right now, I didn't get more than 4 hours of sleep during ECT this year. And ECT ran exceptionally well. Everything was on time. But there's just so much to do that we don't sleep. And it's just what goes into it. And I mean, I'm not balling over here. I'm not going to EVO this year. I have student loans. It's not like, we're balling. So I don't see it as that huge of a deal.
Arturo, the talk about TOs with the money, that was actually the tail end of the money talk this week. Earlier in the week, people were talking about money with regard to Evolution, players talking about money with regard to them not getting enough. Do you feel like this resentment is partially born on the misconception that TOs are big ballin' when certain players seem to feel like they should be big ballin' and they aren't, in their opinion? I mean, do you feel like there's this illusion that's being allowed to perpetrate here, where players are like, I don't get anything, and the TOs are walking around with 50 grand in their pocket? Like,
like I mean, it's kind of a complicated issue. On one hand, people see what's going on in esports and they think like, why can't I get that as a player? But it's really not. It's really not that simple. Although, like, I do want to see like an increased prize pool. People are already fighting with each other over scraps already, not only with tournament winnings, but like monetizing footage. So I don't know, but I think, like I said before, I think people should try to build like their own name into a brand, create content. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys here watched Goo Talks yesterday, man. Like, there's definitely like a lot of things that what Ryan said that players can and should be taking away. They want to sustain themselves on playing fighting games.
Yeah, I
At
mean,
least,
I think
at least in the interim, because you have to assume that these $1 million tournaments are not coming. But yes, TOs do not make as much money as people think they do, and with the profit that these TOs do make, most of the time they reinvest into the tournament for next
Yeah,
year.
that's I don't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah,
that's what a lot of people don't see either. Is that we do treat it as like an actual business, and the few $1,000s you make off of it, that's got to be the next down payment. You know what I mean? It's not like we're walking away with cash in our pockets. It all gets reinvested eventually.
yeah, right. And even if TOs are making like a little bit of a profit, I wouldn't mind. Like, it is like a full-time job for the whole weekend. It's literally like no sleep, 3 days. Like, why shouldn't they make a profit if anything? I certainly don't mind. As long as everybody's happy with the event, then like I don't see the problem.
I want to interject here real quick, and then I'm going to throw it up back to Gutex. Earlier today, I was on Twitter and I threw out this anecdote about how I love beer. So if I want to make it my livelihood, instead of sitting at the bar expecting somebody to put a $5 bill in my hand every time I crack a beer, I'm looking at learning how to brew beer and how to make beer and how to sell beer. I mean, it goes back to what Arturo is saying about creating a brand. And I think that there's a lot of players who seem to have this mentality that if they're going to get more money, it has to come from the TOs. And no matter how well organized, how well ran, how participated within these tournaments are, there's only so much money that you can generate from a community event. At some point, if we want to make that quote unquote esports leap, there has to be support from the developers. And so far, it's not really been there on the same level as a Valve or a Riot Games or a Blizzard. And the best way for us to go about attracting the attention of developers is to show what kind of content we can create, what we can do with our community as far as creating brands and creating content, creating experiences instead of just going to a tournament. And we've talked about this on the program several times about how it's no longer really sufficient to just go to a tournament and sit in the chair and put your stick in your lap and then expect to get checks in your hand. Like, that's not really a viable business model within the community within which we live, where we are very different from esports in that there's almost no developer support outside of, I mean, Capcom is rooting for us. They like us, but they're not tossing out $5 million checks. I mean, that's just not the way they roll. They're a Japanese company. They don't see how that works. Gutex, do you agree, disagree here that the best way to get on that level with the esports is to stop worrying so much about player money and to start investing in our time and energy into creating content and creating brands and making experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that worrying, or not worrying, but I think that focusing on what we can do to make ourselves sustainable is the way to go. Because let's say that there was developer support or there were more big sponsors. I mean, it's not really guaranteed. It could disappear at any time. But if you focus on building something substantial for yourself, which does take time, effort, and learning new things, I think you'd be a lot better off. Because it really bothers me when I see players complaining about prize money because I've spent so much time, because Mike and I have spent so much time developing content and working on sustainability instead of blaming others for our particular situation, right? Like, everybody out there,
Yep.
especially the top players, has the power and the resources to, let's say, make a YouTube channel and then focus on developing some content, putting out some videos about the thing that they supposedly love to do. I just it it kills me because when you blame other people for things like this, like, oh, there should be more money, the TL should put in more money, it's like, well, you're kind of giving away your power and not taking responsibility for your own destiny.
Exactly.
Yeah, people don't have a long-term vision, man. Like, they just want the money to happen right away, and nobody wants to work for it. Like, not even 6 months.
Nope.
Yeah,
Not
and
even 6 hours.
right, exactly. I mean, we've put in years and years into doing this stuff, and that's why we've achieved a small, tiny, minuscule amount of success. But I mean, just
emphasis on minuscule.
but like, just to put it out there, I mean, if there's any players that are listening that don't know how to get started in doing the stuff that we're talking about, stuff like creating content, building a brand, like, feel free to hit me up. Like, I'm always I talked to a player today. I spent 20 minutes on the phone with a player that's local here to LA, that's trying to do that aspires to do big things. And, I'm totally happy to guide people in the right direction because, if you haven't been doing this stuff the whole time, I can see why it would be intimidating. But if you accept the fact that it's going to take a long time to build, um, there's a lot of potential there. And who knows, by the time, these $1 million tournaments come around, you may already have something sustainable, and it might just blow up that much bigger. But if you wait until this shit is like way bigger, you're going to be way behind everybody else.
Mike, as a player who creates content but also still goes to the tournament, there's a misconception I think that you have to kind of retire or be semi-retired in order to create content, do streaming and stuff like that. And you and Arturo both are guys who do a lot of content creation, are involved with YouTube creation, are involved with streaming and stuff, and have both just at UFGT, third places, fourth places. So you're still placing high in these tournaments. What do you feel like when you see, as a player who focuses probably on playing first, but on creation a very close second and cares about both? What do you feel like when you see players on Twitter or players on Facebook who don't really do anything except play, complaining about money like this?
I mean, to be truthfully honest, when I see all of the complaining on Twitter, I just stop because it just gets me so mad. Like, I hate complaining because, oh man, I could go on and on about that. But to an extent, I do understand. I guess this is just me trying to put my head into the minds of one of the players who plays this game all day, every day, and they travel to these tournaments, and I think somewhere in their head, it's changed, and it's not about competing. It's that you tell yourself, people are watching this tournament for me. People are making money off of me. And after I win, I'm only getting X amount of dollars while everybody else is walking away, with more than what I'm getting. And then I guess in that sense, they feel like, they should be walking away with 20K. To which, in that extent, if that's the way you're going to look at it, I get it. I totally understand. And, they probably should be making more. But me personally, I guess I see it as, I see how the situation is in the FGC, and I see that it's going to require a lot of work. It's going to require a lot of guts to get people on that point. So I'm just going to keep working and not complain. I hate complaining.
Well, I mean, like, if you look at it, we're in a really good position right now. A lot of the work that people have been doing since 2009, with streams via I Play Winner, Level Up, the guys at Chaos Gaming and all those, and Team Spooky, obviously. It's drawn the attention of Capcom. I kind of took a little shot earlier and said that they just root for us. They don't necessarily support on the level of a Blizzard. But we did have Street Fighter 25. They did put up for that. I mean, for them at least, that was a lot of money. That's way more money than they've ever fronted for any event previously.
Yeah.
Probably more money than they've ever fronted for events combined in their entire history. So I just wanted, I mean, like, I feel like you're making a really good point about this. We talked earlier about this misconception that the TOs are walking away with, five large in their pocket and the players aren't getting anything, and they want the money that the TOs are getting, but there's not really any money to be had for anybody right now, and that we need to kind of work together and convince, the big developers, like, hey, we got money here, let's pass it around,
Yeah, I mean, like the Capcom tournament, that was great. That's what everybody obviously wants, but that's not something that all the TOs can constantly do. And again, the reason why that kind of thing isn't happening every week or every month is because, why should Capcom lose money doing this all the time when, they can focus on releasing another Devil May Cry, and another Resident Evil, games that, will constantly generate income for them. That's where their focus is at right now, not spending it all on tournaments.
Well,
At the
no,
end of the day,
it's
it
also
is about money.
No, well, it's also because Capcom doesn't have a way to monetize tournaments. Like, if they could find a
Right.
way to get a cut off it, then they would probably be more interested. But it's not the same. Like, like they're not like a Valve where you can just crowdfund like a tournament. I mean, that would be sick. But yeah, it's not realistic right now at this current moment.
Yeah, just right
That's
now.
something I'd love to
Hopefully in
see.
the future.
It's a problem with the business model, because if the fighting game model was shifted away from the idea of putting a quarter into a machine to play and was instead switched to, let's say, free to play, then there would be a larger incentive for the developers to try to find extra ways to bring in money well after the game has been released. Stuff like, I mean, nobody likes it, but, DLC, microtransactions, like that's why League of Legends is so huge. And that's why Riot can put together these ridiculously huge tournaments, is because they got all this money coming through.
Yeah,
Because the model is different.
Yeah. The only game that's doing that right now for a fighting game is like that Chinese KOF clone, Zhonghu Z Wei or something like that.
Right.
But
Yeah. King of
yeah,
Combat.
King of Combat, but like that's only in Chinese. If there was something marketed towards Western audiences, like it could potentially blow up. But that requires foresight.
Not exactly foresight, just somebody paying attention. Because King of Combat is doing it, and
Yeah,
a lot
but-
of people are
yeah.
interested in that.
Yeah, yeah, but like like these big developers probably still think like it's a risk. I mean, how big is the company that makes King of Combat? Is it a big or like a small Chinese startup?
I have
Do
no
you know?
idea, and I didn't look into it.
Hey, well, Riot Games was a small company when they started out. Now they're probably one of the biggest video game companies in the world right now. So I mean, if you come across a market that's ripe for the exploitation of a good idea, and then you throw that idea out there, you can really plant something in the ground that would take hold and take you places that. I mean, like if you had told me 5 years ago that these guys would make Blizzard look like a joke, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are,
It's very true.
So Arturo, I'm gonna throw it back to you real quick. Speaking of money and players and discontent, how do you feel when you hear people talking about boycotting Evo over something like money?
Oh well, I mean, like I guess I've played both sides of the fence. Like on this issue, I mean, I spent a year producing events at MLG with the big money pots that nobody showed up to, and I've also been going to community events for quite some time. So like I understand both sides of the table. Yeah, Evo. Yeah, it is nice to want more money at Evo and all that, but I feel like if you're a marquee player, if you're somebody that can get at least top 32, I don't see why you wouldn't go to Evo. I mean, I've had my gripes with like Evo over the years, and I don't really see eye to eye with how the Cannons and Wizard like exactly do things. But at the end of the day, it's still Evo. Like I'm gonna go. It's gonna benefit me more than it won't benefit me by going. And like I would hope that most top players feel the same way, but apparently some of them don't.
Johnny Cage, do you agree that people are just kind of, it's surprising or baffling to hear people talk about wanting to boycott Evo, that, there's tournaments and then there's Evo?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. That seemed like out of left field that people suddenly were talking about doing that. I mean, Evo is honestly one of the biggest open format gaming tournaments in the world, and it's amazing to see. What did they start? Ryan, I think you would know. What was it? UC Berkeley in the
Yeah,
cafeteria.
they started at B2.
Yeah,
like,
you're
in
at B3.
Boston. No,
Yeah.
no, I wasn't at B3. I was at B4. That was in NorCal. But they started B2 Boston, and B3 was in NorCal. It was at Sunnyvale, and then B4 was at the Folsom Game Room, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So we
and
got you. Yeah.
it's literally that started out as just a regular regional event, and to see where it's gone, it's astounding. And
Yeah.
I don't think anybody should boycott Evo, not at all. I mean, I've been to Evo like six times, and the only reason that I'm not going this year is because I'm also a Quake player, and I'm going to try to compete at QuakeCon in August, so I can't afford to go to both, and I can't get the time off of work. But I would never not go to Evo. It's Vegas.
Yeah, I don't
Mike,
understand. Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ryan.
I just don't understand why. I just don't understand why you would want to cut off your nose to spite your face. Like, you're gonna not go to Evo, but somebody else is
It's
gonna
gonna.
take your place.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like that's the paradox with all this stuff. As a top player, you could be the best player in the world, but if you're trying to hold out for better offers or something, there's going to be some kid out there who's like, 17 years old or whatever, and he's just like, "Oh, sweet. Like, so and so is not going. I don't got to worry about this guy." And then he makes it into top 8 because you didn't go.
Well, hold on. To play devil's advocate here, isn't there a little bit of an element to where Chris G's kind of playing his cards? Because I mean, I bring him up specifically. He was the one who got this ball rolling on this talk. Um, isn't there like a little bit of an element to where now Chris G is so dominant, specifically in Marvel, that if he did not go to Evo, and somebody else won Marvel 3 when he was at Evo, for all time, people would look at that guy with an asterisk next to his name as the guy who won Evo the year that Chris G did not go?
I
Mm,
think people would definitely look at it that way. At least all of the Marvel heads. They'll be like, "Oh, well, Chris G wasn't there." But I'll tell you who wasn't complaining: the dude that won that tournament.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I have to agree that it's kind of cutting your nose off to spite your face. I'm trying to see it from all angles here, but I really can't see it. Mike, do you have any insight into why anybody would want to boycott Evo?
Man, why anybody? Why would somebody want to boycott Evo? I would think, again, kind of what I was going back to earlier, with the fact that if you have it in your head that you attract X amount of views, people, let's take Chris G for example. When people think of Marvel, they probably think of F Champ and Chris G, right off the top of their heads. And if the pot is really small or something, you're not getting any incentive, to go there, any kind of like, upgraded, hotel rooms, maybe some gambling money, it might turn you off. But at the end of the day, you got to put that aside. You got to go. This is evil. You don't miss that. Doesn't matter.
It's like
People want that.
it's like if you're a
Yes.
college football team and they invited you to play in the BCS championship and you just like turned it down. You're like,
Right.
no, I don't feel like doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, but I can't, I don't know what's going on through his head as to, exactly why he would want to boycott Evo. That's something you just got to ask him.
Well, I guess we'll find out in coming weeks whether or not Chris is going to go. We've got CEO coming up.
He'll be there.
In less than a month. Yeah, I think I don't think anybody in the right mind thinks he's going to boycott. I think he just wants to talk, but we'll see. But we do have CEO coming up. That's the last Road to Evo tournament. UFGT was the 4th, and then CEO is coming up another month, and then it's going to be July, and it's going to be Vegas, baby. So hopefully we'll see all the panel there, except for Sweet Johnny Cage. Unfortunately, he's going to be out playing those first-person shooters. I didn't even know people still played Quake. That's still a thing. Like,
Yeah, believe it or not,
just
they
kidding.
released Quake Live a few years ago, and it runs through a browser. The community is small. It's basically the ST of FPS right now. It's small but dedicated.
that's actually a really apt comparison. I like that a lot. The ST of FPS. It's honest too. That's another reason why it's like ST.
Yeah, it's if you are losing in Quake, it's not luck. You are losing because you're bad.
I respect that. Anyway, thank you to our panel tonight for joining us. I want to give a quick shout out and thanks to Sweet Johnny Cage, who you just heard from. You can follow him at twitter.com/sjcage, and you can also follow his regular tournament at twitter.com/EC Throwdown. And then make sure you guys are keeping up with the Fall Classic, which is their big event that they're going to. He and Joe are going to be working with all the East Coast tourney organizers to throw a mega event, kind of looking like the East Coast Evo right now. People say that about final round. This is looking like it's going to be a big deal. So make sure you guys are keeping up with the Fall Classic. Also, shout outs to Mike Ross for joining us for the first time on the program at twitter.com/thatmikerossguy. Thank you to returning guest Arturo Sanchez. Congratulations on his 3rd place in Injustice. Twitter.com/NYCFurby. And then last but not least, thank you to Gutex. Always a pleasure. Twitter.com/Gutex. Make sure you guys subscribe to our Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/iplaywinner, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/iplaywinner, where we simulcast these programs. You can catch the archive of every fray that you miss on the iPlaywinner YouTube, as well as the archive of our other regular podcasts, which we have Super Desperation Radio, a podcast devoted to the KOF community and KOF games on Mondays, and The Show That Sucks on Tuesdays, featuring Hanzo Gonzo and Harrison from Starbase Arcade. Harrison being one of our primary stream producers, and Hanzo Gonzo actually stepping up and doing a lot of stream production work himself lately. Those guys talk about whatever. And then, of course, we broadcast live here every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with a rotating cast of characters here on The Fray. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Make sure you follow all of our guests on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/DarryH. If you guys have any suggestions for topics, I would love to hear them in the future. We will see you guys next week at the same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, thanks again to our panel, and yo, Fray.